Well, this is Marsha, Sinetar, of course, and this is a mailbag, the second one, I believe, of our series of questions that come in from the YouTube channel, and also sometimes from the books. So I got one recently, actually on a Sunday night. I was just about ready to close things up for the day, and this came from a reader of a book called Ordinary People as Monks and Mystics, where I quote a researcher by the name of Richard Bucke, B-U-C-K-E, who, in the reader's research, it turns out was a great admirer of Walt Whitman. And she tells me that Walt Whitman, apparently, we now find out, had some racist views. So her question to me was, how do we reconcile someone that has a great talent, like a Whitman, with someone, that same someone, who has obvious flaws? In many of our minds, we might even say is sinful in viewpoint, actions, choices, and so on. Well, first of all, for me to answer this question properly, I guess you'd say fully, it would probably take about a decade, maybe more. I'll do my best, and as you listen, why don't you add your own 2 cents in notes if you're taking notes, or just in your thought process. I know that with our minds together, we can come up with a very full and complete answer, but here's what I have. Now, the reader and I are only talking about attitudes, not actions, so I'm going to limit my remarks to that. For the first point, I would make that talent, to me, has to be divided from the creature or humanly nature. I see talent as God-given, and therefore, to the degree that we realize, express, reflect God's divine image in us, to that degree, our talent is going to be near perfect. And if we look at any contributor, inventor, artist, parent, leader, as I say, contributor, we're going to find talent of a enormous, wonderful quality that we recognize as a community, whatever community we have, however large it is. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, we have our human nature, which we know is flawed. And as a matter of fact, if I waited for the perfect person to come along to quote in any of my books, or you in your life to admire, there'd be no one, because everybody who's now alive, to my knowledge, humanly speaking, has some sort of flaw. So that's first. Okay, so there's the problem. There lies the issue. What we have here is a sense that we want people to be perfect, and we don't want to follow anybody or emulate anybody or even admire anybody if they have some flaws. And to me, this is kind of a youthfully spiritual inquiry, because it's like when we were young and we discovered that our parents, whom we loved and admired, had feet of clay. And this is traumatic. It's an upset. It's a turning point in our life where we begin to reconcile how things really are to the way we wish they were. You know, even Jesus, when the rich young man approached him and he called him good master, I think that's in Luke 18, maybe verse 19. Chapter 18, verse 19, I think it is. And he says, good master, what must I do to gain the kingdom of heaven or to follow you? I forgot exactly his exact words. And Jesus kind of rebukes him, and he says, who are you calling good? There's only one good, and that's God. And this reinforces my point. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about it more after I answered the reader's inquiry, and it occurred to me that of all the characters in the Bible, Abraham, Moses, David, St. Paul, the prophets, St. Peter, almost all of them, where we hear and read more about their lives, and not every character in the Bible is fleshed out as far as character development. None of those men that we admired were guiltless. They were sinful. I think Abraham lied. Moses killed people, one or two. David, we know he had tremendous flaws, and yet God called him a friend. He was a friend of God. St. Paul was a murderer before he had that conversion experience. So this is my point. We have to come to terms with the idea that those people that we admire, who are worthy of admiring in their contribution, in the skill that they have, the talent that they show us, the service they render to the greater good and to us as human beings. These people, when we look deeply at their character, in fact, if any of us looked at one another deeply, we'd be shocked. We wouldn't like what we see, and this accounts for many of the rifts that we see in families, my own included. And this is where I think we have to come to terms with the idea that people we admire, people we quote, people we want to copy, emulate, live as though we were their disciples. These are individuals who, if we look very closely at their human nature, what we're going to see is that we don't admire them anymore. This is a big mistake. We have to be grown up about it, mature about it, realize that there is no such thing as human perfection. Why callest me good? There is only one good, and that's God. So this is my answer. I'm going to think about it a little more. Maybe I'll add some more to this recording. So this is the way I come at it on this Sunday night, beautiful spring evening, where I've had to grapple with a wonderful question, youthful though it is, tricky, complicated though it is. I appreciate the question very much. It got me to thinking about things and clarifying for myself. But the way I come out at the end of my thought process is that our talent is like light, capital L, shining in the darkness of our human nature. So let's all develop our talent, purify our human nature, spiritually speaking, to the best of our abilities. And you know how Jesus says we ought to forgive 70 times 7? Probably every day, 70 times 7. If anyone has sinned that we know, including ourselves. And maybe that's the way we can reconcile this. Thank you.